Thank you, and welcome to The Cube. I've always wanted to say that, The Cube. Feels like a TV program. So what I'm going to do this morning is I'm going to introduce you to climate change and sustainability. The problem is that many industries, what happens is you're the director of sustainability or you've been told to do these things to make your company more sustainable, but they don't always tell you why. And so I'm here to make sure that you have the facts that allow you to persuade your colleagues this is really important and regulation is coming down the way. So, climate change. So climate change is a really old science. So when you read climate change deniers in the media going, oh, the scientists aren't sure. Yeah, we've been sure for about 150 years. And it all started with Eunice Foote, an amazing female scientist. She was an activist in America, and she did a very simple experiment, which any of you can do. She had two test tubes, one full of air, one full of CO2, and she put them outside in the garden. Of course, she also had thermometers inside, so she measured the temperature. The temperature of the one with CO2 went up quicker, got to a higher temperature, and cooled down slower than the one with air. She discovered the greenhouse effect. Next year, with a male colleague, she published the results in a scientific journal, and he went on to present it at the conferences. You'll be pleased to know things have moved on now, and nowadays we allow women to actually present at science conferences. So, not to be outdone in London, James Tyndall actually built this equipment, which is still there. I've actually touched it. It doesn't work anymore. And he built a thermocouple, which meant he could measure the heat absorption by greenhouse gases. And he discovered water vapor is the most important greenhouse gas, followed by carbon dioxide and methane. We now know that after that is nitrous oxide and CFCs and some of the other nasty industrial chemicals that we produce. And he realized that it was water vapor and these greenhouse gases that kept the Earth nice and habitable for life. So, what is climate change? Well, it's really simple. And I mean it, it's really simple physics. Okay? And so what happens is the sun, and the energy is mainly light, passes through the atmosphere. About a small amount of it is UV radiation, which luckily is absorbed by ozone, which stops us getting skin cancer, but most of it passes straight through. A third of it reflects back into space from white ice sheets and from sort of like clouds, but 2/3 hits the ground. Now, I'm going to ask you to imagine you are not here. You're sitting on that tropical beach, okay? You've got your favorite cocktail. Mine's a mojito, just in case you need to know. And guess what? You feel hot because the light has hit your skin, converted to heat, and you have to radiate that away. Exactly the same happens to the Earth. And this is where the magic of greenhouse gases come in, because guess what? Those greenhouse gases hold on to that heat for a little while and then release it into the atmosphere. Strip out those greenhouse gases, temperature of the Earth would drop by 35 degrees Celsius. So that means a German summer would be minus 15, and a German winter would be about minus 40. Okay? So greenhouse gas is good. However, in 1938, guess what? Guy Callender discovered that the world was already warming up. So climate change was discovered in 1938. And what he did was put together a load of temperature records from around the world. I say around the world, from the British Empire. You know, we measured everything. And showed that temperatures were getting warmer. And he worked for the British Coal Board. So he knew that burning coal produced CO2, and he put two and two together and basically published that CO2 going into the atmosphere was warming. This was 1938. We know from the Keeling curve from Mauna Loa in Hawaii that CO2 has been going up every single year, and carbon dioxide levels are now 50% higher than they were before the Industrial Revolution. Methane is 150% higher, and those levels are the highest they've been for 3 million years. That's how much we've disrupted the actual atmosphere. So, this is where all audience participation comes in. There's only a few of you, so no one's going to judge you. Put your hands up if you like skiing and snowboard. That's why your knees are, yeah, okay. Okay, brilliant. Guess what? Do it now, okay, because snow in the Northern Hemisphere, oh look, since the 1970s has been dropping markedly, okay? And so therefore, we're deeply worried about the ski season. But also, summer Arctic ice, sea ice in the Arctic has been retreating. You've seen that. Reporters from Germany, from DFK, from sort of BBC, have been going up every year and going, oh, look, it's retreating. It has been. And this is the geeky one. This is where I become a scientist. The heat content of the upper atmosphere. It's not something you can see being inbuilt or the sun, okay? It's not something that people really pick up on. But think about it. The oceans cover 70% of the Earth's surface. The upper ocean is 1 kilometer deep, and it is just storing more and more heat. That's the one that scares me out of these. Sea level change. Started at 3 millimeters per year, is now getting closer to 9 millimeters a year. No, it's not going to suddenly overwhelm us. But if you leave it for a decade, suddenly all your coastal defenses are going to start to be eroded. And this is the one that you've all seen. This is the temperature curve where, as you can see, last year, temperatures hit 1.48 degrees warmer than pre-industrial times. You notice that as a scientist, I put up loads of data. So I put up the Hadley Center, NOAA, Berkeley Earth, because they all use slightly different ways of calculating the global temperature from all the data sets we have. I also love this. These are the warming stripes. So a dear friend of mine, Ed Hawkins, in Reading University, actually decided that most people don't deal with graphs. And actually, trust me, it looks much better printed. And so he invented the warming stripe. So this is what Germany looks like from 1881. As you can see, it goes from dark blue to really dark red. And it's become a bit of a cottage industry. So, oh, look, you can have a tie, okay? Your CEOs of your companies should be able to afford a Tesla. If they can afford a Tesla, they can afford to wrap it. The only thing I would say is I would probably have it starting blue, yeah, exactly, and going red. I don't know why they've done it like that. I mean, I'm sorry, I'd have red on the top, okay, just because it looked better. I can afford the T-shirt, okay? I'm an academic, so I can afford the T-shirt. I could afford the leggings, but I'm not going to, okay? Just will not look good. And of course, many of us have suffered from the COVID, and therefore I was at climate conferences in Glasgow wearing the designer mask. Okay. So Tanya mentioned last year. I don't think people really understand how scary last year was. So this is the temperature for 2023. 200 days out of 365 broke the record temperature for that day ever recorded. Look how far ahead it is, all of that. If we look at the oceans, this is where we are incredibly concerned because the red line is 2023. Look how far away it is from any of the previous 30 years. And then the blue line at the top just carries that on. If we take the last 12 months, temperatures globally have gone over the 1.5 degree target that was set at Paris in 2015. Global extreme climate events. We've had 220 extreme climate events that have been described in 2023. That is a 30% increase on the previous years. And as you can see, it's not just one place. everywhere is being affected, whether it happens to be Atlantic storms, cyclones, whether it's flooding in sort of like the Middle East. And we saw that. We saw that this year. Dear friends of mine live in Dubai. They had 4 months rain in 12 hours, and basically everything shut down. And I'll let you into a little secret. The climatologists in Dubai are excellent. They told everybody 2 weeks before that their models were showing these storms are coming. A week before they said, the storms are coming, we can see them. And they didn't do anything. And guess what? It got huge flooding, and the airport basically was out of action for days. Okay. I'm going to use a UK example. So over on this side, your left, in 2022, London had 40 degrees for 3 days. Now, on the right of that picture was a hypothetical 2050 example made by the BBC. Just go, this is what climate change will do to us by 2050. Yeah, it happened in 2022, okay? 40 degrees. Now, we all go on holiday. We've experienced 40 degrees, so why is that so strange? This was in July. The peak temperature in July in the UK for the last 10 years is 24 degrees. Yeah, this is why we go on holiday. So therefore, this heat wave was 16 degrees warmer than it should have been and caused over 2,000 excess deaths. So heat waves kill. On the right, more globally, the problem is with increased temperature and humidity, the ability to work outside sometimes becomes impossible, physiologically impossible to work outside. And remember, half the food in the world is produced by small farms where the farmers are family-owned and work outside. And as you can see, the number of days lost, i.e. you cannot work outside, is increasing. And this is the number of days here where people, vulnerable people, are experiencing 3.7 billion more person heat waves than in the 1990s. So, what are the effects of climate change? More extreme storms, floods, droughts, heat waves, and wildfires. We've seen all of those. May lead to food and water insecurity. I put the word may because the interesting thing is we produce enough food for 10 billion people. There's only 8 billion people on the planet, and there's 825 million people that go to bed feeling hungry every night because food is about access, not about the amount. May lead to migration and conflict. This is the big scare. You know, people are going to migrate. There's going to be wars over climate. If we look at history, people don't need excuses for conflict. Look around the world now, okay? Actually, my own personal opinion, it's usually male ego, particularly individuals that drive this. But, you know, that's just my own personal opinion. Migration may be an interesting one because there are many countries where there will be areas that become uninhabitable. So displacement within a country will be important and migration will increase. And there's also then, our scientists talk about tipping points. These are the key pieces in the actual climate system that suddenly will accelerate. So for example, Greenland ice sheet, Western Antarctic ice sheet, the monsoonal system, all of these will change in the future if we do not curb climate change. Now, most of these do not occur according to our models until beyond 2 degrees warming. A couple of them could be triggered between 1.5 to 2 degrees. So we have still a little bit of time if we act now. So what about the future? Okay, so it's pretty bad now. What about the future? Well, we use supercomputers, okay, because I can't have loads of Earths and torture them, okay? I can't double the CO2, half it, etc., because we're doing the biggest experiment on our planet anyway, so no one's going to allow me to do an even bigger one. So we use incredible supercomputers. These are based on the weather models, which are now absolutely fantastic. And as you can see, they have layers in the ocean, layers in the vegetation, the clouds, and everything is represented. Problem problem is the science is great. The problem is you lot. And I don't mean you, I mean just everybody. It's like, well, how many people are there going to be on the planet? How are they going to generate energy? All these questions mean that we have to create, so the technical term for these are scenarios. So we sit down with economists and social scientists and political scientists to say, what is the future going to look like? To you and me, these are just stories, future stories. So the red one, this is where I would have been here 10 years ago going, look, we're looking at 4 to 5 degrees warming. However, what's really interesting, I can put a line through that. The reason being is because the world has moved on. Current policies means that temperatures will be limited to about 3.1 to 3.7 degrees, okay? Yeah, that's not good, by the way. You know, it's not like the end of the planet, but it's really not good. If we go to the pledges, the promises made at COP in Glasgow 2 years ago, 2.4 to 2.8 degrees. And then there's the two ones that I really like, which are the political ones, the 2-degree pathway and the 1.5-degree pathway. Because it was at Paris in 2015, and sorry, this is where I have to take a big sigh. The French were magnificent. As an Englishman, that really hurts, okay? But they were incredible, okay? They got 196 countries to agree to the Paris Agreement. I'm not going to tell you how. There was lots of real manipulation and a little bit of blackmail. But, you know, hey, it's international diplomacy. It worked. And so what they agreed to is that by mid-century, we globally would be net zero. Brilliant. They also said that we would limit the temperature to 2 degrees warming and that we would have an aspirational target of 1.5 degrees. And of course, I love this. Achieving this will require complete transformation of energy generation, industry, infrastructure, and personal behaviors. Oh, so basically everything has to change, including the print industry. See, I did slip it in there. Right. Okay. Is 1.5 degrees still feasible? So you've heard in the press that we have just passed 1.5 degrees. We have, but that's because there's been an extra kick by El Nino, and I would predict, like many other climatologists, that there will be a little cooling over the next year or two, and then the warming trend will continue. So we can, if we reduce emissions to net zero by 2050. So that's possible because at the moment, 90% of the world's GDP is under a pledge of net zero. Europe, 2050. UK, because I have to say it separately now, 2050. USA, 2050. China, 2060. India, 2070. So all of them are planning for net zero. I'm going to let you into a little secret now. What we don't tell you is that's great, but if we get there, we have to suck CO2 out of the atmosphere for the next 50 years, but please don't tell anybody because getting to net zero is going to be bad enough. Oops. Okay, moving on. You didn't see that. The other thing people forget is that the energy demand of the world would double, if not triple, by 2050. So there we are now. And this is where we need to be in the future. So, okay, so at the moment, 80% of all energy generated around the world is from fossil fuels. So in the next 50 years, we have to move all of that to renewables, except we're also doubling the amount of energy. So we have to produce 180% of today's energy minimum in renewables to make sure that we get to net zero. You wonder why the fusion people love me. Right. Okay. So we need win-win solutions for everything. Everything is going to change. The next decade, you think this is amazing, come back in a year or two, and you'll see that everything will have changed because of sustainability and AI. So things are changing. There's exponential growth in solar and wind, annual electric vehicle sales, battery storage, they're all going through the roof. Great. However, Simon Sharp and others, when they've done the calculations, going, we're doing incredibly well, but we have to do everything 5 times faster. So if you take anything from my talk, just remember that one thing, which is we're doing brilliantly, but we need to do everything 5 times faster. If you do that, we might get there. And also, people don't understand transitioning to electric away from burning stuff is great. If we transitioned everything in Germany, okay, that is possible at the moment. So I'm leaving out things like concrete and aviation, okay? Everything that we can. Yeah, guess what? We would cut the energy requirement by 40%. The reason being is burning stuff is really inefficient. Example, heat pumps are 3 to 5 times more efficient than fuel-based or electric-resistant systems, okay? Efficiency, efficient. It's because it's 21st century technology, not 19th century technology. I always use this because everybody sort of likes to have a go at electric cars. Well, electric cars, they only waste 15 to 20% of the energy. Your petrol car, 64 to 75% of the energy is just wasted. So, wonderful efficiencies. You'll hear a lot of politicians over the next few decades going, we cannot afford to do net zero. It's going to ruin people. It's going to stop jobs. It's going to make the poor even poorer. Interesting because, as far as I am aware, poverty is a political decision anyway, so you can decide how many poor people you have by making good political decisions. You know, you can change that. But the interesting thing is, the Downdraw project says that if we do net zero properly, it can save $46 trillion globally. That's half the world's GDP. Okay? And of course, it is a tripartite. Okay? We need governments to step up, to regulate, to incentivize, to subsidize, and also, I hate to use this word, lead. Who knew? We need corporations. We need incredible companies that are represented here to basically innovate, to change, to actually do things better, more efficiently. Yeah, they can still make profit. That's absolutely fine. But just do it in a better, nicer, and cleaner way. And individuals, we need to actually make sure the governments do what we want, but also that corporations are actually supplying us with what we need. So, lists. So, I'm now making sure that you are in charge of all governments. What should we do? Support renewable energy for the energy transition. Really sensible. Tax fossil fuel subsidies. I'm going to switch to the next slide, but I'll come back to this one. Did you know that countries spend $7 trillion subsidizing the fossil fuel industries? That 7% of world GDP is given to the fossil fuel industry to produce fossil fuels, which then pollute our atmosphere, our rivers, our oceans, and cause massive air pollution. So yes, China, USA, Russia, India, even Germany, and UK are really bad at doing this. So why not remove those? Just imagine suddenly going, oh, here, 7 trillion, here, renewables. Problem solved. Okay, back to this one. We need to support electric cars, public transport, which is all electric. We need to build the circular economy. I'll come back to that. And we also need to reforest and rewild, promote low emission farming and diet. I'll come back to diet. And support, expand emission trading schemes. So the circular economy. Most industries, if you go out there now, into the halls, etc., you'll see what they're doing is they're taking raw materials, they're making stuff, they're making us use it, they then dispose of it, they try to do something with the waste, but that then leads to pollution. So what we need to do is think about a much more circular approach, which is we make, we use, we reuse, we remake, recycle to make again. And the EU are really thinking through this legislation to support industry in this transition, because it's not easy. It's a completely different way of thinking about it. And again, key things are, we need to regulate product design. You cannot, and I'm going to be very mean, you cannot retrofit this, okay? Why can't I put a new battery in it? Why can't I put a new camera in it? Why can't I update the software properly? And I won't say which type of phone I have. But again, if you put that design right in the start, through regulation, then it helps. And then next, regulate usage. How can you use something? Because we all know we can design the best products, then the public get hold of them and misuse them, okay? So we need to be able to work out how we actually do that properly. And also, product design, I'm going to come back to this, and waste planning are essential. I've worked with many waste companies, and Suez basically turned around to me and said, we want to be a zero waste company. I said, but that's all you do. You're a waste company. They said, yeah. But our ultimate aim is to actually mean that we don't have to deal with waste, but we're doing all the recycling, all the energy, etc., and we're going to get rid of that part of the business as quick as possible. So because, again, at the moment, 60% goes to landfill. Only 40% is actually still recycled, and that's with progressive laws. And before you turn around to me and say, oh, yeah, no, but the green economy, stuff like, there isn't much in it. I hate to tell you, the green economy is already here. $10 trillion was spent in the green economy last year. That's $1 in $10 in the global economy is in the green economy. It's already here. The problem is it's so disparate and so dispersed, you don't necessarily see it. In the USA, the green economy employs over 10 million people. The Inflation Reducing Act in the USA has produced more jobs per year than any other previous president. UK, 2 million jobs. Okay, companies, so this is what you really want to hear me say. Okay, you need to set meaningful greenhouse gas reduction targets. Do not say, yeah, tomorrow we're going to be carbon neutral. The public won't believe you, your employees won't believe you, and your shareholders will go, what? So, again, make sure you manage it. Switch to 100% renewables energy as quick as possible. Engage employees in the company's sustainability agenda. I have worked with billion-dollar companies, and the interesting thing is it's the people in the middle that start having that stressful conversation that their kids have basically hassled them, etc. It's a French company, so it was over the coffee, okay? It wasn't over the water. And guess what? The whole company, within 4 years, had completely changed. And guess what? It makes a bigger profit, it has better clients, it has more government clients than it ever did before. Design products for the circular economy. Offset your emissions through reforestation rewilding, because there's some stuff that you cannot do because that's under government and other places. Link your ambition to your supply and value chain. Your supply chain is about 11 times your footprint, usually. Lobby government. Some governments do actually listen to industry, some don't. And empower entrepreneurs, because there'll be people in your company who are the ones with the new ideas. CDP, Carbon Disclosure Project, showed that companies that disclose their carbon footprint and are managing it actually get a 67% higher profit than companies that try and hide their footprint. Supply chain is about 10 times bigger than your own footprint, so anything you do there will have a huge influence. And I love Microsoft because they basically said, yes, we're going to go carbon neutral by 2030. Okay, my own university, many companies are doing that. Fantastic. And then they said something really interesting. They said, and between 2030 and 2050, we're going to remove all the pollution from the atmosphere that we created and our value chain and our supply chain has created since our founding in 1975. Okay, I'm not sure how to calculate it, and I do this for a living, Okay, I'm not sure how you're going to remove it. And I do this for a living. But it's great that they have this aspiration. Because Microsoft are saying, we will be there in 2050 selling you rubbish software. Therefore, we want a planet on which we can sell you that software. Sorry, I shouldn't have said that. I'm sorry. Bill, forgive me. Okay. Individuals. I always have to include this slide because it doesn't matter who I talk to. I always get questions about, okay, what can I do? What can I do? So the first thing is talk about it. Go into your company. Talk about being sustainable, okay? All the facts and figures are out there. You will get better employees. You will get better retention rates. You will get higher profits. All the data is there. Personally, switch to a more plant-based diet. I know I'm saying this in Germany, so I'm probably going to be escorted out of the country. But that I don't mean don't have any meat. Just if you really love your steak. Okay, I'm a vegetarian. I still hanker after steak. Have it once a month. You have it as a really special. You make sure that it's sustainable, grass-fed, the best of the best, and you have it as a treat. Trust me, you'll live much, much longer, and your kids will love you. Switch to renewable energy supplier when you can afford to. Reduce, reuse, recycle more. Reduce your consumption. The one thing we discovered during COVID is that we didn't miss the trainers, the T-shirts, the watches, the sunglasses. What we missed was being able to see our family and friends, hug them, and go out and be social. So don't listen to the actual advertisement industry, even though they use the print industry a lot. Don't listen to them, consume less. Okay? Walk, cycle as much as possible, use electric and hybrid cars, and just to show you, I do think about my talk, wrap your car if you can, use electric and hybrid cars, fly less, divest from fossil fuel companies. Huge one. Why give them their money when you can actually invest in new technology, and vote and protest? And I'm just going to leave you with a little bit of hope from the climate negotiations, because most people go, oh, they're just talking. So I've been to most of them. Yep. And I have to say, if you can imagine this conference and all of these halls, except filled with countries trying to tell you how green they are, that's COP, okay? And what was interesting about Dubai was that in the heart of the oil and gas nations of the world, this is what happened. There were strong statements that we should still aim for 1.5, though the global stocktake said, actually, we're nowhere near keeping to 1.5. And then the statement that came out, that the world will transition away from fossil fuels in energy systems in a just, orderly, and equitable manner to achieve net zero by 2050 in keeping with the science. Okay? This is only the second time that fossil fuels have ever been mentioned in a climate change agreement. The first one was in Glasgow, COP26. This is a huge statement, which was read out by the president of COP, who also happened to be the CEO of the Abu Dhabi National Oil and Gas Company. Okay? So this is the beginning of the end, but it's a very slow beginning. Okay? So, really happy to take questions, and I'm just going to leave you with this wonderful cartoon. This was from 2009. This was before Copenhagen conference, where we had huge hopes, which were dashed. And what it says is, look, if we do sustainability and we deal with climate change, guess what? We can have energy independence, no reliance on Russian gas. We can preserve the rainforest. That would be great. Sustainability, green jobs, livable cities, renewables, clean air, clean water, healthy children. And there's always somebody at the back. And you notice how he's been drawn? Saying, well, what happens if we created a better world for nothing due to a massive hoax?